Several years ago, I had the privilege of being a volunteer chaplain with the fire department up in Baker County, where my last church was. And I didn't know a whole lot about being a firefighter or being part of that world, so I thought, it'd be a good idea to take a first responder class. And so I signed up with all the new firefighters to take this first responder class. And in there, you learn all kinds of gory things. And it's taught by paramedics, and you get to practice, and you get to do IVs, which, I'm thinking, they didn't teach me this stuff in seminary. And the CPR and all of this. And as part of, to graduate the class, you have to spend so many hours riding in an ambulance with the EMTs and the paramedics, as one of them. And so, knowing me like you do, and my aversion to both snakes and blood, I'm like praying, Lord, don't let there be any snake bites or blood that day. In fact, I said, God, I stopped short of saying, God, if you love me. But I did say, God, it would just be really great if this was one of those boring days. I picked like what I thought would be the slowest day of the week to ride 12 hours in an ambulance. And I said, okay, God, it would really be nice if this was a boring day and we could just hang out in the fire station and we could talk and I could keep my pastor hat on and all that. Because the first thing you do is you inventory the ambulance. You got to go through all this stuff. They're going through. We didn't even get through one cabinet before the call came, and out we roll. And I'm like, oh Lord. And so, being totally self-serving, I'm praying, oh God, please let it go. Let it be easy. Let it be a kitten. Let it be whatever it is. But no, we go there. It's a guy who OD'd on cocaine or heroin or something. And we get to the house, and his mother answers the door. Firefighters are there too, and she said, I don't know what's wrong. I can't wake him up. And he just laid in. Big guy. This boy was huge. And he was stuck down between the bed and the wall, and she couldn't revive him. And paramedics looking, pops eyes open and starts looking around, says, your son, this 40-year-old son that lived at home, he do drugs? Oh, no, my boy would never do drugs. Well, ma'am, looks like your son's OD'd here. And so we had to get him up. This is a small little mobile home. And so they're trying to lift and get him up. It wasn't easy. I tell you, he was big. And so we get up. And of course, then somebody has to hold a ceiling fan up so you can get this guy out. And he's in the ambulance. And they say, Tom, hey, you want to put the tube down his throat? Because, we've been practicing that on the dummies, and he ain't going to notice. I was, no. How about the IV? I'm like, no. So then they thought, all right, we got to do something. And so they hit him with whatever drug they were carrying, and because he's pretty placid. He's breathing and all, and we're on our way to the ER, and so they give him that shot. Poof. Whoa! He just sprang to life. Eyes wide open, then he got mad and had strapped him down. But he just sprang to life. Now, you have that image in your head? Now, we didn't get to use paddles on someone. Has anyone ever seen that done or had it done to you where the heart stops and they put the paddles on? Poof. All right. Keep those images in mind as you turn to Isaiah chapter 60, because I want to show you something. Isaiah 60. Where's he going with this, you say? I'm going to show you. I'm going to tell you. Verse 1. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and thick darkness is over the peoples. But the Lord rises upon you, and His glory appears over you. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift your eyes and look about you. All assemble and come to you. Your sons from afar, your daughters are seated at the hip. Then you will look and be radiant. Your heart will throb and swell with joy. The wealth on the seas will be brought to you, and the riches of the nations will come. Verse 6 says, and herds of camels will cover your land. Young camels of Midian and Ephah, and from Sheba will come, bearing gold and incense, and proclaiming the praise of the Lord. Those 6 verses. Now, I shared that long illustration to get to the point about springing up from the shot of adrenaline or the paddles that get your heart started, because that would be the adequate translation of the Hebrew word that is translated arise. Because there's not an English word that fits what the Hebrew is communicating in that one word. Arise is the closest we have in our language, but it really is referring to like a jump start. Like putting the cables on that battery that won't start your car, but you use the power of something stronger to bring an instant spark of life to something that is dying. And that, brothers and sisters, is a state of what many churches are in. That their glory has passed, they're dying, they're fading, they're just hanging on. And maybe they've compromised and they've tried to be all things to all people, and they've allowed their message to be watered down, and they've allowed their lives to be watered down, and they've just gotten to the place where it just doesn't matter anymore, and we don't really stand for anything much anymore. And so we get to that place where God has to come along and get the paddles and put them on us and say, arise, shine, your light has come. And so this brings us to opportunity that sets before us, because we see it all the time. We can focus on the darkness around us, or we can look for the light. And the choice really is ours. We have someone contended that Wesley wasn't so much about free will as he was talking about freed will. So with our freed will, we can choose to focus on the darkness, on the negative, on the bad things that are happening, on denomination that's falling apart, on churches that are past their glory, on the fact that my knees hurt when it's going to rain, or the fact that everything that goes on around us is, oh, what are we going to do? Or we can focus on, God, what are you doing in this generation? What are you doing? Look for the light. That's the choice that Isaiah is talking about all these hundreds of years before Christ. This is the choice we have. Look for the light, or just dwell and whine about the darkness. We can choose. The Israelites, some chose light, some chose darkness, but nobody stayed the same. We have that same thing. And he recognizes that darkness, yeah, there's darkness around. There's darkness in the church. There's darkness in the world. There's darkness in my own heart. There's darkness all around me. But the end of the story is not darkness. It's light. See, darkness covers the earth. Thick darkness is over the peoples. But the Lord rises upon you. When you start to look for Him, you start to focus on Him. We say it all the time. It dawned on me what God was doing, what God is saying. He wants to dawn on you. His glory rises upon you. It appears over you. People will notice that there's a difference in you. It says, nations will come to your light and kings to the brightness of your dawn. The nations literally is ethnicities, is languages, but it's really people who are around us that aren't part of the kingdom yet, but they see something, and whether it's church folks or folks that are just hungry for meaning in their life, we're looking for something that is authentic, something that is a real encounter with God. That's why whoever leads the worship is so important, because their task is not just to put, well, we know people like this kind of songs, we know people like these kind of songs, and the pastor's preaching this, so the book tells me that this hymn will go with that, and da-da-da-da, and you put together a nice little package, and we all sing, and then, I preach a non-offensive sermon, and we all go home and wonder what happened. But that's not what we're called to do. They're called to make sure that what we do leads us to the throne room of God. And what I'm supposed to do is let you know what God thinks and what God is saying to us. And I can only do that when I listen to see what God is saying to me. And I have to walk in that all week, and then I inflict it on you. Because this is what's supposed to happen, and our lives are supposed to be touched by God, and we're supposed to go home going, wow, I'm encouraged, or wow, that hurt. But we're not supposed to go out those doors the way we came in. We're supposed to be different. We're supposed to be touched. We're supposed to encounter God. Nations will come to your light. People are going to be drawn to our light. Here's your homework. Go out to your front porch or entranceway and take out the bug light, the one that the bugs can't see supposedly, and put in just a regular clear bulb and turn it on, and then watch it. Take your journal with you, watch. And you'll find that even a bug knows to go to the light. But we're more sophisticated than that, and we just screw our lives up. But even bugs know to go to the light, and the light shines upon us. And if we let the light of the glory of Christ shine in us and through us, people are going to be drawn to that. Because he goes on to say in verse 5, then you will look and be radiant. Because back here he said, but the Lord rises upon you and His glory appears over you. Then you skip a verse or two and it says, then you will look and be radiant. Your heart will throb, thanks to that jump start of adrenaline or the paddles, and swell with joy. How about that? And then there's another side effect of that arise part, and it's not only that you will become radiant and be filled with joy and your heart will beat faster with your relationship with God, but He's going to bless you. In fact, one day you might go out and look in your driveway and it'd be full of camels. Because it says so right here. A herd of camels will cover your land. I'm glad I don't have a big lot. Well, I'm not sure that everything we take literally. But I do think that as camels were a sign of blessing and a sign of wealth, and certainly transportation, you might, I'm not going to say God's going to give you a brand new car. But what I am going to say is that He intends to bless you. And He talks about gold and incense, which are signs of wealth. And I'm not talking. This is not the prosperity gospel, because you might not have two nickels to rub together. But what it is that you set yourself up for things to start going right. When the glory of the Lord rises upon you, good things start happening. Doesn't mean bad things never happen. You still run into resistance. You still hit the speed bumps. You still get sick. Your kids still rebel. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. It's because we did. I'm a child of the 50s and 60s. And so, I mean, it says you want to see what rebellion is? Look at our generation. We boomers. But the thing is, while we still live in a fallen world where there is darkness around us, the light shines on us. And even if we don't have the material blessings that others may, we have a blessing that you can't buy. And that's that peace of Christ in our hearts. Knowing that if the very worst thing happens and we were to drop dead today, that we have a place with God in heaven. And nobody can take that away from you. In fact, Jesus put it this way. Why are you afraid of people? All they can do is kill you. And then Paul goes on and says, when you're arguing, when you're fighting, when you're arguing about over something, aren't you being merely human? You're supposed to be better than that. When you let God put paddles on the heart and jumpstart you, when you arise and shine, the glory of the Lord rises upon you. And it says you will become radiant and you're going to go shine on others. That's what it's about. That's what he's talking about in these verses. And as we shift gears a little bit, and we're going to do Holy Communion, and I can't think of a better shot of adrenaline in your heart than taking the bread and the cup and letting the Lord rise in you. Again, if you'd like to talk to me about church membership, be right over here after church. And secondly, I know there's some high school band folks here that you might be thinking about what's next after high school. Well, Michelle said she'd chat with you girls that might be considered in the military and what that might look like as a band member and how you get there from here. So feel free. She said, come on up and talk to her. Everybody else, just go shine in the peace, the grace, and the love of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.